This week in Agribusiness, serving America's most essential industry, with agriculture broadcaster Orion Samuelson and yours truly, Max Armstrong, and featuring agriculture meteorologist Greg Solier. This week in Agribusiness is brought to you by Firestone. You never farm alone. The biggest outdoor farm show in America. Coming up this weekend on This Week in Agribusiness, we talk about the Farm Progress Show. Hello, everyone, and welcome to this weekend's broadcast as we come to you from Decatur, Illinois, the scene of the Farm Progress Show. And at this site here in Decatur, Illinois, for the biennial show that comes here, yes, every other year to be sure. We had great weather for the show. Nice sunny skies, bit of a breeze, warm temperatures, but certainly tolerable temperatures. And some of the most prominent leaders of agriculture in the country come to this show, including the president of the largest general farm organization, Zippy Duvall from Georgia, joining us here. Good to see you, sir.
Good to see you, Max. I'm proud to be here with you.
You've been busy.
I have been busy, but that's a good thing. Coming off of the pandemic, it's good to see people face to face, shake their hand, and hear their story.
You've encouraged your members wherever they are in America to spend some time during this congressional break visiting with their lawmakers. Are they in fact doing that?
Well, I think we're doing a really good job. Our grassroots are really are involved and engaged in making sure they see their congressmen and senators while they're back in their states. I can't tell them how important it is with the issues that are flying around D.C. today.
It has never been more important, has it? I mean, I'm looking back at covering this industry for more than 40 years. I can't recall more serious matters on the radar screen for farmers and ranchers.
I can't either, Max. And the thing about these matters issues we're dealing with today, they're so big you can't hardly get your arms around them when you start talking about climate and carbon credits and immigration and labor. I mean, they're so big and so complicated.
Then we have things that are looming out there that really concern us, such as property rights matters, such as waters of the United States. Are we going to be able to effectively deal with that in agriculture?
Yeah, and I can't tell you, the 2015 rule was the largest land grab in the history of our country, and we were able to push that back in the last administration. And to think that we're going to go back and rewrite that ruling is just really concerns us terribly. And we're going to be watching and trying to have some effect on it. But our farmers we're like a ping pong ball. We can't make a long-term decision on our farm because we can't decide what's the waters of the U.S. and what's not.
Your members have to be a little concerned just watching the process, watching the headlines, watching the coverage from Washington, with the sense that maybe there's nothing that can be done. Are you hearing a lot of frustration from your members?
Yes, I do, but let me tell you, it's still our time. It's our time to make a difference, and if everybody sits back and says, we don't have a chance of making any difference, you're wrong. We got to make a difference. The future of our industry and being able to continue to family farm it's got to be on the forefront of our mind, and everybody's got to have their voice heard and being engaged either in Farm Bureau or most likely Farm Bureau and their commodity group running side by side.
Do you work together quite a bit, Zippy, with those commodity organizations?
All the time. I think you never get anything done in life by yourself. It takes a partnership. And we're always there to work with all our commodity groups.
I think it's been felt that the last bastion of bipartisanship in Washington was the agriculture committees on the Hill. Are they still able to work together across party lines?
Well, I think the Climate Solution Act coming out of the Senate with 92 votes was bipartisan. I think that's a great example when we work together and we, as a coalition like FACA, the Food and Agriculture Climate Alliance, and lead the conversation on Capitol Hill with good recommendations and good principles, then our congressmen and our senators will pick that ball up and run with it, and out of that came the Climate Solution Act out of the Senate.
Finally, are you able to marshal the forces of your non-farm members? You have a lot of folks who don't live on farms or ranches that are Farm Bureau members, people such as myself who support the cause.
Well, yes, and we did some surveying here not long ago about the trust level that people have in certain groups of leaders, and we found out that 88% of Americans trust the American family farmer. and we were higher rated than any other professional, being doctors and lawyers. Of course, it doesn't take much to be above a lawyer. No offense, lawyers. But all the professionals out there, farmers were more respected than anyone else and more trusted.
If they could meet Zippy Duvall, it'd be 99.5%, I maintain. Good to see you.
Thank you, Max. It's always good to be with you.
The president of the American Farm Bureau Federation, Georgia farmer Zippy Duvall.
This portion of This Week in Agribusiness is brought to you by the Soybean Checkoff. Tips, videos, how-tos, and more. If it has to do with ag tech, you'll find it in the Tech Tool Shed, your unbiased one-stop resource. And it's time to talk markets here at the Farm Progress Show. I'm joined this week by Steve Nicholson, a grain and oilseeds analyst with Rabobank. Steve, thanks for taking the time to talk to us.
Thank you, Mike. It's good to talk to you again.
Well, we got a lot of growers here in central Illinois who want to talk about corn prices. Steve, bring us up to speed. We've come through a very strong summer. We've got questions about supply on this corn crop. How is the trade interpreting these next 3 weeks before combines start to roll?
Well, I think if we look at the short term, the market's looking at this and going, boy, it's raining, so that's good for grain and good for corn prices. But I think overall, when you look at what's happening in the corn market and the market in general, I think the market's had a tough time trying to figure out what does this drought mean in the Western Corn Belt, because we've had it all summer. Does that mean good crops, bad crops? How bad is it? We know the East is good, and so I think the market's struggling to know, because we never had dealt with a full year drought. And so, and they're also hearing from the back, from the back row in a sense, there's a lot of variability in this crop across the entire Corn Belt, and what does that mean? And we may not really know that until we get the combines rolling.
And with that being the case, when there's uncertainty in the market, Stephen, ordinarily when it's supply uncertainty, prices kind of lean downward. Do you expect us to trend to the downside bearishly as we get towards harvest?
Well, I think I will say the jury's out a little bit on that, because we've had so much downdraft here on these rains. And the question is, and we've kind of seen this pattern before, even kind of the August crop numbers, we came in, the market was trending down, and we got to August and we popped up. So I think the September numbers and the October, November will be really interesting numbers to see the market. Does it set itself up for another rally after we see crop production numbers in September, October, November?
Gotcha. Let's talk a little bit about the demand side. Stephen, I know that is where you spend a lot of time on researching. Of course, that is a huge component of what constitutes the prices on the Chicago Board of Trade. Look at the overall corn demand picture. How do we sit right here at the end of 2021's growing season?
I think it's still going to be a very strong demand as we finish this old crop, if you have it, and we finished it. We're here the 1st of September. We're down to new crop, and I think USDA, and when you look at the S&Ds for 21-22, I think they're a little light on exports. If you look at export sales for the new crop year versus a year ago at the same time, all the way through August, they were higher than a year ago. So it kind of makes you. I believe that we'll see higher exports. And the challenge, of course, is how do we make sure the balance sheet works and that we don't get stocks so low that we can't, we just don't have enough pipeline inventory to keep going.
Yeah, that's a really good point. One of the places that we've seen demand come back in a very strong way post-COVID is ethanol. Stephen, how do you figure that market's going to handle itself moving into this fall?
Yeah, I think that, I think COVID is certainly an issue we still have to deal with. We've already seen, even in travel at the airlines, we've seen a setback. And I think we will see the same thing in car travel, although a little more. People may rather convert from air to surface travel. But the fact is, I think ethanol demand will be good here in this coming year. But I think long term we have to be concerned about ethanol demand. And when we look at our 10-year baseline, we have ethanol demand, or corn grind for ethanol, relatively flat.
All right, now let's talk pricing, Stephen. Are we going to see $6 corn here in this new crop season?
Ooh, boy, that's a good question. I think it all will come down to how exports behave this year. My view is exports will be better than USDA has in the balance sheet. And when we look at our 10-year baseline and we look at next year, we do see prices in the upper fives, potentially hitting a 6, but we still see good prices going forward.
And hitting 6, the key is maybe don't hang your marketing on that $6 figure. Be aggressive when you can.
That's right. And we've always said to people, sell the rallies because you don't know whether it's going to be here tomorrow. And at the same time, when we look at $5 corn, you can still make profit. There's still profit there. let's lock in some profit margins and move on and take that risk off the table.
All right, well, we'll be back to talk wheat and soybeans with Stephen Nicholson after this. And we're back talking markets with Steve Nicholson from Rabo Agri-Finance. Steve, we talked about the corn market. One of the traditional followers of corn, of course, is the wheat market. We knew that spring wheat wasn't in amazing shape, of course, up there in the northern Great Plains and in Canada. Harvest is wrapping up. What have we learned as that crop moves into the bin?
Yeah, it's both in the U.S. and Canada. It's really been tough. We've seen major cuts in that wheat crop there. And we expect that there may be more cuts in that wheat crop. And that's certainly helping the Minneapolis exchange on Minneapolis wheat. But we've also seen a few cuts. USDA cut the winter wheat crop last in the last crop report. It was a big crop, but the fact is you have very few places in the world that produce spring wheat other than it's in the Black Sea area and, of course, North Dakota and Canada. So that's really going to help that. And the other thing we've seen, because corn got so high priced, we've seen a little bit more wheat feed in the U.S., which is it's not common, but we've seen an increase of that. So in the wheat crop, we have had bad wheat crops around the world. Northern Europe has been a challenge. We've seen issues, of course, in Russia. Ukraine has had a good wheat crop, and Australia's had a great wheat crop, and Argentina's had a tough wheat crop. So wheat looks very strong, and as we go into, basically planning for the winter crop, that will be a really important time to see how farmers react to that and how much more acres we get for wheat. But wheat has been very, very strong.
It certainly has been, and everything's been kind of strong. Let's talk about soybean pricing.
Yep.
They've been strong as well. We are getting a little closer to harvest, and as you know, it's really tough to tell what's going to be coming out of the field until it comes out of the field with soybeans.
Yeah, it's soybeans until you get the combine. You really don't know what you had. People look at pod counts. I understand that, but they don't correlate well with yield. And as we've talked with folks here at the Farm Progress Show, we see really good soybean yield here in Central Illinois. We see good soybean, good pod counts, lots of nodes and good soybeans, and we see a lot of three seed pods. So that portends we'd have pretty good yields, but it depends what's the weight of that soybean going forward. And the soybean crop has had an up and down year. Started tough, got cold, sat there for a while, finally got going. It's gotten hot and dry, but we've had some rains here late. Typically that usually is good for soybean yields, and we should, I think that we'll see good soybean yields this year. Probably not great, but good.
Good enough that we're going to be able to meet this global demand, China's continued purchasing as we take a look at this new crop calendar export season?
Yeah, I think they'll be fine. We have to remember Brazil had a record crop this year. Expectations they will plant upwards of 4.5% more area of soybeans this fall, or our fall, their spring. So 144 million metric ton crop in Brazil. So they'll be a tough competitor as always. So good, I think we'll be well positioned in the world to fulfill China's needs. But the demand for oil and oilseed products is really good.
Well, let's talk about that demand. The oil has been one of the key drivers, or the key driver over this past year, at least since the election. Is that going to continue?
Expectations is that yes, it will. The renewable diesel business is really coming on. Obviously, one of the challenges there is the demand for feedstock or virgin vegetable oil is really high, and it's difficult for us to meet that right now. We just don't have it as fast as the renewable diesel industry is growing. But having said that, this industry is here because of public policy demand to reduce carbon emissions. So we believe, looking ahead, that oilseed oils in particular, vegetable oils, will be a good supporter of the soybean complex and soybeans and canola going forward.
So if a lot of beans are being crushed for oil, obviously meal is going to rise as well. The hog industry is probably going to expand. Does demand seem strong for meal?
Yeah, we do see strong meal demand. And the one thing in this story, and you kind of alluded to it, is that, meal demand's good, but we're going to see a lot more meal. And where do we go with that? But I think when you think about how the oil complex works and look at that, the fact is that soybeans will be strong. Meal will be drugging along with that because it is 48% of the bean is protein.
It is certainly a big component. Big thanks to Steve Nicholson from Rabo Agri-Finance for talking with us this week.
Thank you, Mike. It's great to talk to you.
Chad Colby's look at agriculture technology comes your way next, brought to you by the IBM Watson Decision Platform, combining AI with Internet of Things data to help agribusiness increase yields, improve quality, and drive sustainability. This guy this weekend had no trouble coming up with content for the technology segment. Not that you ever do, Chad Colby, but my, you had to be like a kid in a candy shop at the Farm Progress Show.
Yeah, it was just a fantastic week, Max. You know, with the issues from last year and going virtual, so many people, including myself, you didn't get to see all the new stuff, but this week we got to see a lot of great things, got to see it in the field as well. It was a great event.
The autonomous grain cart. I got to describe these machines moving through the field. Some 50 machines in the field demonstrations. And the autonomous grain cart, I know, was a focus of a lot of attention. Some growers saying, oh, they would never work around us, and others, you know what? It's kind of hard to find help.
You know, I agree with you totally. I had the opportunity to check it out here about 6 weeks ago, and I was completely amazed. Inside the tractor, there's not a lot of extra computers and screens, Max, and it worked really, really well. And obviously on display this week, it was turning a lot of heads.
In some cabs, you see a lot of screens. There are sometimes 3, 4, 5 in there. Is there an effort to consolidate some?
You know, you see that now in new launches. New Holland's new tractor, AGCO's got their new cab. You can see that the manufacturers are listening, Max. They know that they've got to integrate it into a smoother platform, easier to use.
Speed. I heard that mentioned several times, whether it's speed of tillage, high-speed tillage, or even just moving equipment down the road.
Yeah, you're right. There was a great tillage demonstrations this week. Everybody's been talking about high-speed tillage the last several years. Even taking that to the next step further, putting seeders on the high-speed tillage so you can do cover crops or other things. And it's just that evolution of equipment that we're in today. Even automation. Case IH has got automation now, so it will automate the tillage as it goes through the field based on soil types. It's really neat.
I get the feeling there's more coming our way, and you'll report on it in the weeks ahead. Chad Colby here with his segment from the Farm Progress Show in Decatur, Illinois, coming to you this weekend with a special broadcast from the 2021 show.
So fun to go out there, and it's so fun to see that excitement, not only looking at the new machinery, but I think people are just, it gives them that anticipation what they're going to be doing in the next couple weeks.
You hear us from time to time talk about the Farm Progress Show as being sort of an annual reunion. Well, as we continue this weekend's broadcast from the show at Decatur, Illinois, here's someone we've known for a while. Kurt Blades from the Association of Equipment Manufacturers. You're a senior vice president there of the agriculture and forestry area. Is that correct?
You bet. Thanks for having me on.
Right now, your members out there selling equipment are struggling a little bit in some areas, aren't they?
Well, I'll tell you what, we're struggling in some areas because the demand is pretty high, and we love seeing, you know, the new technology, new equipment. But the dealer lots are a little bit soft right now because we're selling lots of equipment. The demand is really high.
Everybody talks about supply chain problems. Are those hitting your members as well, Kurt?
Well, if you're buying tractors or combines or pickup trucks or washing machines, everybody knows about the supply chains, and so we're in the same issue on the ag equipment side. One thing that we've kind of had working in our favor, you know, really starting last year in March after the pandemic started was, you know, ag was recognized as a essential industry. So many of our factories have actually been open, you know, all the way through the entire pandemic, but we are in a global supply situation. So it's transportation issues, labor, semiconductors are all kind of contributing to these supply chain challenges. But we've been working pretty hard to make sure that we can make sure that the crops get in the field and the grains get out of the field.
The electronics, of course, we see that concentrated in that machine up there in the cab, and automobile manufacturers are going through the same thing with the chip shortage. So it has to be affecting your members too.
Absolutely. Whether it's a toaster or a tractor or a, you know, whatever it is, there's semiconductors, and that chip shortage is very real. But it's also pretty exciting because you see the technology you're seeing here at the Farm Progress Show. Man, a lot of semiconductors are doing some pretty remarkable things.
Small tractor sales were hot as a pistol last year during the pandemic as they started to taper off a bit.
The small tractor sales have absolutely been on fire. I mean, we're up about 15% for the year already, and we were up about 25% last year for the entire time. So you think about, you know, small tractors, really for a lot of those folks that maybe have an acreage or a small hobby farm, they've maybe didn't go on their trip to Europe this year. They decided to invest in their property, and that market has been white hot for the last little bit.
Sometimes those smaller tractor sales have been counter to the large tractor sales. It's been a very, inverse relationship. But
absolutely,
that's not the case now.
That is not the case this year. In fact, what's been really exciting across all classes, whether it's tractors, combines, articulated four-wheel drives, they've been on fire really for the last few months, and we're really happy to see that. I mean, some of the really neat stories are those row crop tractors, those over 100 horsepower tractors have just really been strong. Really starting in November last year, we saw that run up in commodities all the way up until this year. We're seeing some real strength there.
The White House has pushed some initiatives that have been a little bit surprising, that they've ventured into an area such as the right to repair. Did that surprise you folks?
It surprised me a little bit because it came out of as a conversation from the White House level. But as we've been saying for years, I mean, all manufacturers absolutely support the ability for a farmer to repair their own equipment. That's been the truism forever. However, there are some things that we stand pretty strong on. Is when it comes to safety and emissions and intellectual properties. There's some areas where maybe sometimes it's better left to a trained professional or a certified technician.
Are your dealers around the country able to get the people they need? You mentioned trained professionals. Can they find that technical expertise in those dealerships?
Well, we do know, very well that there is a labor shortage across the board, whether it's in manufacturing or that technical level or at the dealership at the sales level. So there absolutely are those challenges. But I would also say one thing that we've learned during the pandemic, and I think we're seeing the dealers take advantage of technology to really be able to have some of those conversations, those technical conversations with farmers at maybe at a virtual level to provide that level of service that's far superior than maybe they've been able to do before. So really exciting stuff.
The autonomy grain cart, we saw that, for example, but demonstrated here at the Farm Progress Show. It's a reminder of that push that we are seeing.
You bet.
And really that is being carried out through much of agriculture, is it not, Kurt? And when I think of the groves, the citrus operations, fruit producers, they're really turning more and more as best they can to mechanization.
I mean, it's amazing when you look at automation as it's happening. I mean, we're sitting here in central Illinois. So row crop farmers, we've been dealing with precision farming for a little while, and we're really starting to see it happen. But when you see what's happening in specialty crops, let's look at strawberries as an example, and how soft a strawberry is, but the technology and the sensors to be able to softly harvest a berry and handle it all the way through production, just because of the necessity for labor shortage. It's amazing what this is going to look like in the next 5, 10, 20 years.
Are you finding many young people who maybe they don't intend to go back and farm, trying to get into the business with your companies, going to get degrees, perhaps in engineering?
Well, I'll tell you, I've got a daughter that's a sophomore in college, and it's pretty fun to talk to her about what agriculture is going to look like, because it's fun. I mean, if you talk about big data being the future, we've invented big data in agriculture. You talk about robotics and what they're going to do, we've kind of been doing that for a long time in agriculture. So recruiting young people to work in our business, I'll tell you what, she and her peers are pretty excited about what the food chain is going to look like in the next few years.
We enjoyed the Farm Progress Show, getting to meet face-to-face some of the folks who represent your companies and to exchange some ideas with them. And that's one thing that we've always done at the show. So thank you for what you do in the industry.
You bet. Thanks for having me on, Max.
From the Association of Equipment Manufacturers, Kurt Blades here on the stage at the Farm Progress Show. There's more coming up on this weekend's edition of This Week in Agribusiness. Greg Solier's weather forecast is just ahead. He'll take a look at those days on into October. Stay with us. This Week in Agribusiness, serving America's most essential industry, is brought to you by Firestone. You never farm alone.
Welcome back, friends, to This Week in Agribusiness from the Farm Progress Show. One of the things we know about agriculture is that it is not cheap to be a farmer. Financing is crucial. So we're going to talk a little bit about financing in agriculture. We're joined by Bill York, the CEO of Farm Op Capital. Bill, you've been in the ag lending business for 40 years. Talk a little bit about how you've seen it change and where we sit today in 2021 as ag lenders.
Yeah, we've certainly seen a lot of changes in the commodity prices. I've spent, as you said, 40 years lending, most recently as the CEO of Agribank, the Farm Credit Bank in St. Paul, and a dozen years leading C&H Capital. So I've seen a lot of evolution in terms of funding, and certainly we've probably not seen anything as volatile in terms of commodity prices at this point in time. We also haven't had the risk mitigant tools that can be used by a farmer and used by a lender to help put together an operating line of credit.
And I think part of not having those tools has meant that there have been gaps that have developed in accessibility to financing, particularly for younger or beginning growers. What can be done about that, Bill?
Yeah, we put together a structured loan product to address those farmers and really looking at the segment that is the significant and growing segment. Some 8% of farmers produce 65% of the product, and the majority of those rent more land than they own. So the traditional underwrite, the traditional lending does not necessarily work very well for these individuals. The same thing as you mentioned, new and beginning farmers don't have the equity. So what our structured loan product is designed to do is to take a look at the farmer's ability to produce a crop, their marketing strategy, their crop insurance plan, and look at those risk mitigants and lend against that.
So Farm Op Capital, you're not doing the traditional balance sheet analysis that a lot of folks might be familiar with talking to their lender. You're looking at really their capacity for production.
Yeah, we'll look at their balance sheet for background and understand their balance sheet. But yeah, we're looking at the value of the crop they're producing, and that's our primary collateral. And it gives us the flexibility to pass on to them a fairly well-defined advance structure. We will advance more than other lenders will for the same type of collateral, and we extend earlier. Right now we're doing 22 loans. The objective there is to create value for the farmer, or give them the opportunity to create value so they can use that funding source to lock in inputs, make sure they're available inputs, negotiate their rents, and really put them in a position to optimize their operation.
Now, from the grower's perspective, how different is it working with Farm Op than a traditional quote-unquote ag lender?
Yeah, I mean, I've seen all types of ag lending, right. and we're going to look at some of the same things, but we're going to be very intimate in looking at what is their operating budget and what is their marketing budget, their marketing plan, their marketing tactics and strategy. We're going to be very focused on that. While we don't do, we're not a CTA, we don't do marketing, we're not a crop insurance agency, we don't sell crop insurance, but we do stay very attuned to their plans there, and that's what we're lending on.
Bringing some change to the industry, that's Bill York from Farm Op Capital.
Now, agriculture meteorologist Greg Solier brings us his farm weather forecast for the nation for the week ahead. It's presented by Pivot BioProven, the nitrogen-producing microbes that stay put, whether or not. We stopped by the Pivot Bio booth at the Farm Progress Show to cover the weather with Mr. Solier. You know what? Weather is pretty mundane here.
Yes.
Compared to the western part of the country where there have been the fires and there's been the flooding, it was quiet here.
Yeah, thank goodness. And the maps and charts continue to convey, at least it's a return to quieter weather across the west, i.e. in the southwestern states. On to those weather maps and charts into the Pacific Northwest. The drought pattern continues on, but with time, that jet stream is beginning to settle on southward and has somewhat better moisture prospects. We see it across the Dakotas. Warm to hot weather continues on. Northern Great Basin, the monsoon setup is winding on down, but looky here. Here comes a front in from the Pacific Northwest coastline early to middle parts of the week. Then by late in the week, that front marches east through Big Sky Country into the Dakotas, and would you know it, here we are into the beginning days of September. Finally, the rains back into the northern plains. Meanwhile, over the southwestern sections of the country, amazing, we can get those tropical weather systems stay west of the California current. That's that cold beam of water through the areas offshore of California. You bring that moisture northward. Last week, flooding rains in Arizona. Otherwise, a couple of thunderstorms. The heat returns into the desert southwestern Four Quarters area. Yeah, 1.1 million acres up in smoke across the west, and lousy air quality. Lousy rain chances mid to late week, by the way, in the southwestern states, but there may be some semblance of a little onshore flow into the valleys of California, and maybe a couple of thunderstorms at least over the Sierra. Cooler, less humid air, by the way, Max, into the central and southern plains.
Well, in the northern plains, producers have to be thinking about the longer term. Maybe we can get ready for next year with the moisture coming in.
That's right. And again, would you know it, here we go early on into the week, as was the case last week and the week before. The rains came, and they're back into play in scattered fashion. Northern and western Corn Belt back into the plains. Cooler, drier air, a hint of early autumn in the air across the Canadian Prairie, the northern plains as well. By the mid to late portions of the week, more rain back in the forecast. Would you know it? Pretty decent coverages, especially as they head into the Mississippi Valley and eastern Corn Belt. Delightful go of it with air in mind. That's temperature and humidity across the Corn Belt locales mid to late portions of the week. Back into the southern plains. Yeah, last week it was Ida. Last year, 3 name systems, and of course Katrina still in the minds and memories of everyone down there. How about that?
16 years ago.
There you go. And they've got cleanup and recovery into the Delta. A couple of showers and thunderstorms southern plains, but late in the week another tropical system. But this one, Max, takes a run into Old Mexico, south of Brownsville. Cooler, drier air where they need it into the Delta.
The eastern part of the country, what do you see there coming up for the week ahead?
Weather pattern again is beginning to dry on out as we move on into the eastern Corn Belt, as in the heavy rains into the Ohio Valley, the northeast of New England. A couple of weeks ago it was Fred, and of course Ida after that. But showers and thunderstorms are fast moving with cooler, drier air briefly into the upper Midwest. You get into the St. Lawrence River Valley, northern sections of New England, there will be a hint of autumn in the air with some dry time in the middle to late portions of the week. That mature corn crop is pretty much done in Illinois at least, and hopefully get the dry down process underway. Showers and thunderstorms into the western Corn Belt late portion of the week. Southeastern states, for now, the tropics are quiet in the Atlantic and Gulf Basin. There's humidity and more rain across the Gulf Coast area, south of the Delta and west from there. Note the cooler, drier punch of air moving southward on the season's first real cool front into the Carolinas, into the deep southeast part of the country as well. Showers and thunderstorms continue on across the Gulf Coast area. More downpours, by the way, this time South Texas and into sections of the Rio Grande Valley.
Now, Greg Soye is back with his extended farm weather forecast for the country. Presented by Pivot Bio Proven. Visit pivotbio.com to find a representative near you. Oh, we felt fortunate to have good dry weather for the Farm Progress Show. Coming up in the week ahead, a lot of folks are going to get moisture. I took a peek at your map.
Yep.
The eastern part of the country will be wet.
Yeah, that's right, and they don't need any more of it coming off Ida from last week, but at least these are different weather systems onto the maps and charts. That precip outlook for the coming week shows this, an inch or two with 2 separate weather systems across the heartland, and there may be some additional downpours into the Carolinas back north into New England, but the up-and-coming drought monitor should show significant improvement in some of the drier areas of Indiana and the Northeast and New England, and there's some degree of moisture into the northern and central plains. The tropics are active this time again, Max, into the Pacific and southwestern sections of the country. Scant 1/4 to 1/2 inch in the Pacific Northwest. Hopefully we'll get going in the moisture pattern there with time.
Where will the heat be for the week of the 13th?
There's a hit of autumn in the air first of all onto the charts there as we move on through the 13th to 19th, and it is chilly, maybe some frost north of the St. Lawrence River Valley. The cool down all the way into the Carolinas. The heat is moderate and seasonal in nature from the Ozarks back west into California and along the Gulf Coast area. The monsoon and tropical feed of moisture out of the Pacific. There's wet weather back into the southwest. Normal precip will take it in the northwestern part of the country. Fires are ongoing there, and a little above normal precip for the northeast of New England. Drying out, and time for that with crops maturing across the heartland.
Several people have said to me it has the feel of fall some of these mornings, and fall will arrive then.
Exactly. As we move on through the charts here on that 22nd of September, 2:20 in the afternoon, Central Time Zone, the heat is back into place. Centered on the Great Basin, the High Plains areas, the cool air retrograding northward back into the Canadian Prairie. Temps about normal to a little above across the Corn Belt, and warmer, hopefully drier weather over the southeastern part of the country to recover from the tropical storms. Harvest is going to be the Dickens down there. The moisture continues on in the southwestern sections of the country, drying out across the Dakotas. Much of the Corn Belt still unsettled and wet across the northeast and New England.
We're encroaching upon October, and will there still be some warmth around? How do you see it?
Kind of a late season pushes some heat and maybe pushing what's left out there to maturity to hopefully get a little moisture reduction and dry down going. Look at the swath of warm expected over the southwest into the central and southern plains. Big warm up slated for the Corn Belt. Temps about normal in the southeastern part of the country. A little dip settling in to parts of the Pacific Northwest. Some slight cooling Washington State and into the northern Rockies, where there may be a pickup on moisture. Good news there. Into the northwest and northern Rockies, a pickup on moisture. You knew it would be coming after the season. Into the northern plains, the upper Midwest, western sections of the Corn Belt too. The tropics, despite the October calendar date, it's still like bathwater there. It will be in the Gulf and the southwestern Atlantic, so a pickup on moisture there, and a wet weather pattern that continues on over the southwestern part of the country. Back to dry time, unfortunately, into the valleys of California.
Next on This Week in Agribusiness, It's Max's Tractor Shed, spotlighting another great American tractor.
At Max's Tractor Shed this weekend, it's the movie star Farmall tractor. It was in a very popular movie in the mid-60s, In the Heat of the Night. Max's Tractor Shed is brought to you by Store Lock Tool Cabinets. Many folks at the Farm Progress Show leaned up against those cabinets. They saw how stable they are. They looked at how great they appear, too. You can get more information at storelock.com. Well, in the mid-60s, there was a very popular movie that preceded the television show, In the Heat of the Night. It was the movie that was shot in the southern Illinois town of Sparta, even though the movie presumably took place in the deep south. It starred Sidney Poitier and Rod Steiger. And if you look at that movie, you'll see that many of the scenes were shot in an International Harvester dealership. You see tractors on the lot, you see the manager's office, you see combines in the shop as well. One of those tractors was a 1206, made in 1967, that is owned by the Siegfried family in Randolph County, Illinois. The story is, one of the family members was buying that tractor new. The dealer said, "We need tractors on the lot for the movie, can you wait?" So they waited a couple of weeks to get the tractor. That tractor has stayed in the same family all of these years, the Siegfried family in Illinois. Now let's find out what's moving across the block at Big Iron Auctions of the week ahead. Here's Mark Stock.
Well, we've got some great equipment, Max, selling on our September 8th online auction. Over 1,400 items. Our good friends at Hiawatha, Kansas Ag Partners, they've got 29 items on the sale, including a 2006 Freightliner Columbia 112 tri-axle semi-truck tractor. They got a 2015 Raymond Field Charger tandem axle tender trailer. Check out their 50-foot tandem axle farm sprayer trailer as well, plus their Case IH floater. It's the FLX 4510 self-propelled floater spreader. All those items selling for our good friends in Hiawatha, Kansas. They've got a 1992 Ford L800 tandem axle dry tender truck as well, plus a John Deere 2510 fertilizer applicator. Those items selling on the Big Iron website. We also have Joseph Grove retiring from Water Grove, Wisconsin, and they're selling a 1954 International Super H. Kind of rare to find those tractors anymore. Also selling in Watertown, Wisconsin, for all you international tractor collectors out there. There's an International 1566, an IH 660, and a Super M and Super H tractor selling for Joseph Grove as they retire. These items in Watertown, Wisconsin. Also, Mark Bischoff is retiring from Ottawa, Kansas. He's selling his John Deere 9500 four-wheel drive combine, plus he's got a John Deere 7000 Series 6-row 30 planter. All this good quality equipment selling on BigIron.com September the 8th.
The FFA Chapter Tribute is sponsored by Nationwide, the #1 farm insurer in the country. To register your FFA chapter, go to nationwidesupportsffa.com. That's nationwidesupportsffa.com. Nationwide, we stand for you.
We here at This Week in Agribusiness are always proud to salute the FFA, and when we're here at Farm Progress, it's not tough to find an FFA member. I had a chance to meet Max Berry from the Maroa Forsyth FFA chapter, and Max, tell me a little bit about what got you involved in FFA.
So actually my older sister, she was an FFA all throughout her high school years, and right in her senior year I got to see her change, and I was like, I want that. I need that experience to just change myself completely.
And so you've been involved with FFA, and now in your senior year, you've risen to the role of section president. For our viewers who aren't familiar with FFA, what does a section president do?
Okay, so a section president advocates for their section. So I represent 18 schools all throughout here in central Illinois, and I basically get to go from each school to school and figure out what they do best and bring it back to my chapter and then to the state organization.
That is fantastic. And school years, of course, getting underway. Students are back in school in most places. Max, what are you excited about as you look ahead to the school year?
I'm excited to see people. I wasn't too thrilled about the entirety of last year just staring at a computer screen and not getting really to meet people, and that was kind of hard. But now that we're gearing up for an in-person year, it's going to be very easy to see people, meet people, and just grow our organization.
That is fantastic. As you look to the future, you've been so inspired by FFA, you plan to move into ag education?
Yes, I do. So I am going to go study ag ed at SIUC just to like further my knowledge of our organization and get to further help our organization.
That is fantastic. Max, we wish you the very best here from This Week in Agribusiness, and we are always proud to salute the FFA.
Now, Samuelson Says. Insight and commentary from Orion Samuelson.
I guess it's human nature to worry about various events and activities, so what do you want to worry about this week? Because we are, I think, getting slightly back to normal. The Half Century of Progress show in central Illinois was held. Max Armstrong told me there were visitors from about 20 states to come see that show. And the Farm Progress show is not a virtual event this year, this week, but it's actually happening. But we do have to mind our manners and our precautions, and particularly with COVID-19, get your vaccination. Because I hear several reasons people have to not get vaccinated, some in my own family. I have family who says it's a government plot to cull the population, so don't get vaccinated. Come on, I got vaccinated, my wife got vaccinated, my family is vaccinated, because I want to take every precaution that's available to take care of these situations that could threaten us. And then when it comes to other activities, we have African swine fever. Hasn't made it into this country yet, but we have to be careful, particularly with county fairs and state fairs and hogs coming from various farms to the show ring to compete for the money. So there's plenty to worry about. And then the hurricane that we can't control, but boy, it sure wreaked havoc on a lot of people and a lot of homes, and you never know when there'll be another one. So I guess pick your favorite to worry about and then follow the rules and get vaccinated, please. Be safe, be well. My thoughts on Samuelson Says.
As we wrap up this weekend's broadcast, we get a little bit of analysis from Don Torty of Farm Progress Companies to share some insight about this show and the challenges that there might have been in bringing it back after 1 year of a virtual show.
Well, there's always that fear, isn't there, Max, of what will happen. But I've been so pleased with, our crew. It's like they didn't even miss a year, putting everything back together. By the time I got here, it was together. Exhibitors, they pulled out all the stops, and it's been one heck of a show.
Yeah, it seemed like you really hit the ground running. I mean, there wasn't any kind of a hitch in the whole thing. Many great field demonstrations again. That's always the hallmark of this thing.
It is. It's amazing to me, and it's so fun to go out there, and it's so fun to see that excitement, not only looking at the new machinery, but I think people are just, it gives them that anticipation what they're going to be doing in the next couple of weeks, getting out in the field.
Structures. There are new structures that seem to go into this site every year. Is that also the case at the site in Boone, where you'll be next year?
Yes. Everything continues to get better, and that's a beautiful thing about having these permanent sites. Exhibitors can make those investments, feel good about those investments. It's good for them, and it's great for the farmers as well.
This is a multi-generational industry, where the family farm gets passed along through generations, and you do see that at this show, don't you?
I do, and years ago people used to say, well, there's families there. You're darn right there's families here, because families are what farming's all about, right? Not only grandpa that started the farm, whoever's running it today, but also the next generation. And that is one of the things I'm really pleased about, having that multi-generation.
We see a lot of students here. There are FFA chapters that make it a point to come here. I visited with one FFA advisor who brought 50 kids to this show. And I can't help but think about how it might just set off a spark in the minds of some of those young people about what they want to do for their career.
Absolutely. I mean, and we have a lot of universities here that are also doing a lot of recruiting. They get the opportunity to see Southern Illinois or Illinois, but really to see the excitement and the new technology. Who wouldn't want to go home and farm?
From so many of these shows through the years that we've been a part of them, there have been memories that have been hard to forget from people that you've met. And you think about it and you think, my goodness, did that really happen? Did we see them again? There's that social aspect to this show And maybe it's networking among farmers, exchanging ideas that really makes it something other than just an equipment show.
I couldn't agree with that more. I mean, I come here and I see people that I haven't seen, some of them now for 2 years, and it's certainly great to get back with them. And, we have the campers out there, people that come every year, they plan to spend several days here, and it's a great place to be.
One farmer unloaded on me a whole bunch of sweet corn and tomatoes when I left here the other evening. As I stopped by the camper to visit a little bit, I have some cleaning up of the room to do after having visited with him with all that contraband from the show. Good to see you, sir. Thank you.
Great to see you. Thank you very much,
Thank
Max.
you for rolling out the welcome mat. Don
It's been
Torty
great.
with Farm Progress Companies joining us this weekend. Our special edition of the Farm Progress Show and This Week in Agribusiness. We'll be back next weekend as we always are. Greg Solier with his forecast. He'll be filling us in on all the details of what he sees, not just as we get on through the next few days of this summer, but on into the fall too. On behalf of Mike Pearson, Max Armstrong here. Looking forward to seeing you next weekend. Till then, have a good week. Have a safe week. Closed captioning for This Week in Agribusiness is brought to you by Kubota. Shape your world. This Week in Agribusiness is brought to you by Firestone. You never farm alone. This Week in Agribusiness is produced by OMAX Communications in association with 22 Creative Group. We invite you to visit us online at agbizweek.com.